Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Practical Zoology Explainer. Today, we're going to step into our virtual lab, you could say, and get up close with a really important parasite, Fasciola gigantica. So get your notebooks ready, and let's get started. Now, this session is designed especially for you as part of your general zoology course right here at Mini University. My goal is to make sure you walk away with a really solid, practical understanding of the specimen we're about to examine. So, what's our plan for today? Well, we'll start by introducing our specimen and figuring out where it fits in the animal kingdom. Then we'll dive into the anatomy of the adult worm, take a quick peek at its life stages, and even look at it under the microscope. We'll wrap everything up with a quick recap. Let's begin.
All right, let's meet our specimen of the day, Fasciola gigantica. You might know it by its common name, the giant liver fluke. This organism is a type of flatworm, and it belongs to a class called Trematoda, a group made up entirely of parasitic worms.
Now, before we start looking at the details, we have to do something really important. We have to classify it. Why? Well, understanding its systematic position, or its taxonomy, is like understanding its family tree. It helps us see how this animal is related to others, and gives us a proper framework for our study.
Okay, so let's walk through the classification together. The kingdom, of course, is Animalia. The subkingdom is Metazoa. Now the phylum, this is a key one, is Platyhelminthes. This group includes all the flatworms. And finally, the class is Trematoda. Make sure you remember these key English terms.
And now for the main event, the anatomy. We're about to take a guided tour of the major organ systems of the adult worm. And trust me, this is where we get to see all of its incredible adaptations for living a parasitic life.
Here it is. This is a ventral view of the adult worm. The first thing you'll probably notice is its shape. It's very flat and looks a bit like a leaf, right? That's a classic fluke characteristic. This flattened body is a clever adaptation that gives it a huge surface area to absorb nutrients directly from its host.
So let's think like a parasite for a second. What's your number one priority? You have to hold on tight inside your host. So how does Fasciola do it? Well, to figure that out, we need to zoom in on its anterior region, or its head end.
If you look closely, you'll see it has two really powerful suckers to help it attach. Right at the very tip, we have the oral sucker, and you can see it surrounds the mouth. Then, a little further down the body, on the ventral side, you'll find the bigger one, the ventral sucker. Okay, so what's the difference between them? It all comes down to their function. The oral sucker, as the name suggests, is used for both feeding and for holding on. The ventral sucker, on the other hand, is pretty much just a powerful anchor. Its main job is to hold the fluke securely inside the host's bile ducts. Now, let's trace the path of food. It starts at the mouth, inside that oral sucker. A muscular pharynx sucks the food in, it passes through a short tube called the esophagus, and then it splits into two large branching tubes. One thing to notice is that there's no anus. It's what we call a blind gut. These two big branches have a special name, the intestinal cacum. And look at how they spread out, like the branches of a tree, all through the body. This is so important because this worm has no circulatory system, no blood vessels. So this branched gut does the job of delivering nutrients to all of its tissues. All right, let's switch gears and talk about the reproductive system. And honestly, it pretty much takes over the whole body of the worm. Fasciola is a hermaphrodite, which means every single worm has a complete set of both male and female reproductive organs. So let's identify some of these key parts. For the male system, you can see the highly branched testes, the vas deferens, and the serous sac. For the female system, we have a single ovary, the uterus, and these extensive vitelline glands that you can see filling up the sides of the body. You know, the adult worm is actually just one part of a really complex story. To truly understand this parasite, we need to recognize a couple of the other key forms it takes during its life cycle. Here are two of those key larval stages. On the left, we have the myricydium. See how its body is covered in all those tiny little hairs? Those are called cilia, and it uses them to swim around and find its first host, which is a snail. Then, on the right, we have the cercaria. What's the first thing you notice? That big tail, right? That tail helps it swim through water to find its final host after it leaves the snail. Okay, now let's imagine we're putting this worm under a microscope and zooming way, way in. We're going to look at a diagram of a transverse section, which we often abbreviate as TS. This is like taking a very thin slice of the worm so we can see all the different layers of its body wall.
And this is what we see.
This transverse section gives us a beautiful view of the layers of the body wall. By looking at this cross-section, we can really understand the internal organization that gives the worm its structure and allows it to move.
So let's go from the outside in. First, we have a tough, protective outer layer called the cuticle. Right underneath that, you find two layers of muscle, the circular muscle fibers and the longitudinal muscle fibers. They work against each other to let the worm stretch and squeeze. And all the space inside is filled with a special tissue called parenchyma, which acts as a sort of packing material and helps transport substances.
Okay, let's pause for a moment and quickly summarize what we've just seen. That was a deep dive into the anatomy of fasciola, and I just want to make sure we highlight the most important points for you to remember.
If there's one big idea to take away today, it's this. Every single feature we looked at is a perfect adaptation to its parasitic lifestyle, from the suckers that hold it in place, to the simple gut, to that enormous reproductive system. Its entire body is basically a highly efficient machine designed for one purpose, to absorb nutrients and produce a massive number of eggs.
All right, now a question for you to think about. We pointed out those vitelline glands that fill up the sides of the body. What is their main job? What is their primary function in the whole reproductive process? Go back and look at your diagram and think about what's needed to make an egg.
And finally, this is very important. Here is a list of the essential English vocabulary from today's session. You absolutely need to know these for your exams. Practice spelling them, practice saying them, and make sure you know what each part does. They are oral sucker, ventral sucker, intestinal cacuum, vitellian glands, serous sec, cuticle, and parenchyma.
And that brings us to the end of our practical session on the anatomy of Fasciola gigantica. I really hope this explainer has helped you understand it better. Please make sure you go back and review all your notes and diagrams carefully. Good luck with your studies.